The Federal High Court in Abuja has finally fixed November 20th as the date to deliver judgment in the long and heated case of Nnamdi Kanu, the leader of the indigenous people of Biafra. This update has set a lot of people talking because for years now, the case has moved from one stage to another, and now it looks like we're finally getting close to the end of it. Please, before we continue, make sure you like this video and subscribe so you don't miss any of our updates when the judgment comes out. So here's what's going on right now. After several adjournments, arguments, and motions, the court has decided that on November 20th, it will give its judgment on whether or not Nnamdi Kanu is guilty of the 7-count charge of terrorism filed against him by the federal government. The presiding judge, Justice James Omotosho, made this clear after a long legal back and forth between Kanu's defense team and the prosecution. Now, for those following the case closely, you'll remember that Kanu and his lawyers have been insisting that the charges against him have no legal backing. They argue that the law under which he's being tried, the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, has been repealed and replaced. According to them, you cannot prosecute someone with a law that no longer exists. That's the key argument they've been pushing strongly in court. And if the court agrees with them, that could completely change the direction of this case. Please like this video and subscribe if you're following closely because the details matter here. The prosecution, on the other hand, maintains that the charges are valid. They insist that Kanu's past statements and broadcasts, especially during the peak of IPOB's agitation, fall under acts of terrorism and incitement, which the law punishes. They believe that even if there's an argument about which law is in use, the essence of the charge still stands because it's about national security. And this is where the court will have to make a big decision. Is the case still valid or not? Let's also remember that this isn't the first time the court is giving Kanu a strict deadline. A few weeks ago, Justice Omotosho warned that if the defense fails to open its case or file its arguments, the court will go ahead without them. That's because the prosecution had already closed its side and was waiting for Kanu's defense to respond. But instead of going into defense, Kanu's legal team submitted the motion saying there was no case to answer at all. They asked the court to dismiss the charges outright, claiming that Kanu shouldn't even be standing trial under an invalid law. And that move right there was what pushed the court to set November 20th as Judgment Day. Now everyone is waiting, not just lawyers or journalists, but people from all parts of the country. Supporters of Kanu are saying this could be the day justice finally comes their way. Others, however, believe that no matter how emotional the case may be, the law should take its course. And that's why the atmosphere around this case is so tense. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe because the next few weeks will be filled with major reactions when the court finally speaks. To understand why this case means so much, we need to look back a bit. Nnamdi Kanu was first arrested several years ago on similar charges but later granted bail. He left Nigeria while still on bail in 2017 and was later rearrested in 2021 after being brought back from Kenya. Since then, he has been in custody, facing multiple court appearances and several rulings. His supporters have been calling for his release, claiming that his arrest and continued detention are politically motivated. But the federal government says it's purely a matter of national security. Throughout these years, there have been many dramatic moments, from legal debates about jurisdiction to discussions about whether the federal government had the right to bring him back from another country without following international extradition rules. These are some of the major points his lawyers have raised. They believe that since his extradition did not follow due process, the entire trial should not even be happening. They say a person cannot be tried in a court that doesn't have proper jurisdiction. However, the prosecution says the most important thing is that Kanu is in Nigeria and the case can go on. They've argued that the manner in which he was returned doesn't erase the charges he's facing. That argument has been one of the most controversial aspects of the whole trial. People have argued both sides on social media, on TV, and even in public discussions. Please remember to like this video and subscribe because as we move closer to November 20th, the discussions will only get louder. Another key issue in this trial is the argument about the so-called inciting broadcasts. The federal government accuses Kanu of using his platform to make statements that led to unrest, property destruction, and even loss of lives in parts of the southeast. They say his words had real-life consequences, and that's why he must be held accountable. But Kanu's defense insists that he never encouraged violence, that he only called for self-determination and freedom of speech. It's a battle of narratives. On one side, a government saying it's trying to protect national unity. On the other side, a movement saying it's fighting for self-determination and justice. And that's what makes this November 20th judgment so sensitive. No matter how it goes, the outcome will spark major reactions. If Kanu is found guilty, it will likely lead to strong responses from his supporters, possibly protests or renewed calls for his release. If he's found not guilty, or if the charges are dismissed, it will be seen as a major victory for him and IPOB. Either way, this case is going to shape discussions about law, human rights, and regional politics for a long time. Please like this video and subscribe, because when that judgment is read out, we'll bring you every detail, live analysis, and the reactions across the country. This is not just another court case. It's a test of Nigeria's legal system. Can the judiciary prove that justice still works in the country, even when the case is politically sensitive? Or will this become another endless legal battle where no one fully wins? Nigerians are watching, the world is watching, and the question remains, what will happen on November 20th? Now, let's think deeper about this. If the court rules that the terrorism law used against Kanu is invalid, it could change how other similar cases are handled in Nigeria. It could also force lawmakers and the judiciary to review the way charges are framed in terrorism-related cases. That's a huge deal because it affects not just Kanu, but anyone else charged under the same legal framework. Also, this case affects national unity in many ways. For years, the relationship between the Southeast region and the central government has been tense. The handling of this case could either calm things down or make tensions worse. That's why many people are calling for fairness and transparency when the judgment comes. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe. We'll keep you updated as the date gets closer. Right now, security agencies are also preparing. Whenever a major judgment involving Nnamdi Kanu is coming up, the court premises are usually heavily guarded. Supporters try to show up in numbers, and security officers also increase presence to avoid any kind of disorder. Everyone just hopes that things will remain peaceful this time around. So, in summary, we're heading into a decisive moment. Nnamdi Kanu's legal team has closed their arguments, insisting he has no case to answer. The federal government has stood firm, saying it's time for justice. And the court has spoken. Judgment will be delivered on November 20th. That's the date everyone is waiting for. Please like this video and subscribe right now if you want to stay updated. Because as soon as that judgment drops, we'll come back here with the full story. What the court said, how people reacted, and what it means for Nigeria moving forward. When we talk about what might happen after the court gives its judgment on November 20th, we're talking about an event that could shift public mood across the country. This isn't just about Nnamdi Kanu alone. It's about everything connected to his movement, his supporters, and the larger question of how Nigeria handles sensitive political and regional issues. Please make sure you like this video and subscribe right now, because after the judgment, things will move very fast, and we'll be here to explain everything in clear, simple language. So, let's picture the possible outcomes and what they could mean. If the court declares that Kanu is guilty of the terrorism charges, that's going to be a very strong statement from the judiciary. It would mean the court believes the evidence presented by the prosecution is valid and that his actions, especially his public statements and broadcasts, contributed to acts that fall under the definition of terrorism. That kind of verdict would likely mean more years in detention or even a heavy sentence under the law. But what's more important is how people might react to that kind of ruling. We've seen before that whenever a decision goes against Kanu, There's a lot of emotional reaction from his supporters, especially in the southeast. Many see him as a symbol of a cause that's bigger than just one man. So, if the court rules against him, there could be strong responses, not necessarily violent, but emotional and vocal. People will flood social media, radio, and public spaces to express their views. Please remember to like this video and subscribe because we'll bring you the mood from the streets and the reactions immediately after the court delivers that verdict. On the other hand, if the court says the charges against Kanu are invalid or dismisses them entirely, that will be a massive moment of celebration for his followers. It would mean that after years of detention, court appearances, and back and forth arguments, Kanu might finally be set free. Imagine that. After all these years, the court saying there's no valid case. That would shake the political and legal space, but even that kind of outcome would come with its own challenges. The government might appeal the decision, and there could be new debates about whether he should be fully released or face fresh charges. Either way, the judgment day will be a defining one. That's why everyone, journalists, human rights groups, politicians, and ordinary Nigerians are paying attention. Many international observers will also be watching how Nigeria handles this because cases like this can affect the country's global image. When the law meets politics, the whole world tends to look closely. Now, beyond the courtroom, there's also the human side of the story. For a long time, Nnamdi Kanu's family, supporters, and community members have been waiting for closure. Some have said this case has taken too long. Others say justice must take its full course. But the truth is, no matter which side you stand on, everyone wants to see a clear and fair end. Because when a case drags for too long, it begins to affect people emotionally, socially, and even economically. Please don't forget to like this video and subscribe because this story is much bigger than what we see on the surface. Think about it. This case started years ago. It has gone through several judges, numerous adjournments, motions, and appeals. At one point, the Court of Appeal even ruled that Kanu should be released, saying his extradition process wasn't proper, but that decision was later stayed, meaning it couldn't be enforced immediately. That's how long and complicated this case has been. Each stage of it has had its own twist. Now that the High Court has fixed a date for judgment, people are simply saying, let's finally hear what the court has to say once and for all. But let's also remember what this means for Nigeria's justice system. The credibility of the judiciary depends on how fair and transparent this ruling will be. If the judgment is seen as balanced and lawful, it will strengthen people's trust in the courts. But if it looks biased or unclear, it could make more people lose faith in the system. That's why so many eyes are on Justice Omotosho right now, to see how he interprets both the law and the arguments presented before him. Security will also be a big factor that day. Whenever Nnamdi Kanu is scheduled to appear, or when big rulings like this are coming up, the court premises in Abuja usually experience heavy security. Police, DSS, and other agencies will likely be stationed around to make sure everything stays calm. The government wouldn't want any kind of disturbance, especially given the sensitivity of this case. The goal will be to maintain peace and ensure that the process goes smoothly. As we move closer to that date, different groups have started releasing statements. IPOB members have been urging supporters to remain calm and law-abiding no matter what happens. The government has also been reminding the public that the judiciary is independent and that the rule of law will guide the outcome. These messages are meant to keep everyone cool-headed no matter how emotional the decision turns out to be. Please like this video and subscribe because when Judgment Day comes, we'll be going live to break down exactly what happens in the courtroom. You'll know who was present, what the judge said, word for word, and how different people responded across the country. Let's also not forget that this case affects not only politics but also the economy of the region. Every time there is tension over Kanu's case, businesses in some parts of the southeast slow down. People stay indoors out of fear, transport services pause, and local markets lose money. So, if this case finally comes to an end, whether he's freed or convicted, it could bring a sense of stability to the region.
That's why many community leaders are quietly hoping that this will be the final chapter. There's also another layer to all this, the generational impact. Many young Nigerians have grown up hearing the name Nnamdi Kanu. For some, he's seen as a freedom advocate. For others, he's seen as a controversial figure. Whichever way you look at it, his story has shaped how young people understand activism, politics, and freedom of speech in Nigeria. The outcome of this judgment could influence how future activists approach their movements. So as the countdown continues, it's fair to say that this is one of the most important court cases in Nigeria right now. Every major media house is watching. Every political commentator is waiting. And for millions of Nigerians, whether they support Kanu or not, everyone just wants to see what the law will say. Please like this video and subscribe right now, because we'll be here on that day to help you understand the judgment clearly, no matter how complex it might sound in legal terms. We'll break it down in simple, easy to understand English, just like we always do. Now, after the judgment, if Kanu is freed,
the next question will be, what next for IPOB? Will the movement continue, or will there be a new direction for their cause? And if the court rules against him, how will the group reorganize or respond? Those are the next layers of this story we'll explore together as the events unfold. Everything now rests on the 20th of November. That's the day we'll all be watching closely. So, if you've stayed with me this far, thank you so much. Please like this video and subscribe right now so you don't miss the post-judgment update, because that's when the real reaction will start.